Echoes of the Blind Pharaoh, Part 2. Chapter 15, The Dreamer's Cage. The air that poured from the new corridor was colder than before, not physically, but emotionally. It carried weight. Grief. Awe. Fear. Like walking into a place where every wall had witnessed too much and could no longer stay silent. Darek Amun stood at the mouth of the corridor, the compass fused to his wrist flickering in erratic pulses. Layla and Rafi waited behind him. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. They had seen the pedestal's memory. The woman with bandaged eyes. The builders bowing in silent terror. The vault door sealing itself. Her name echoed in Derek's mind like a distant drumbeat. Asarata. They descended into the passage, but it wasn't just stone now. The walls were softened, as if carved from petrified tissue. The texture shifted beneath their fingers. Sometimes smooth, sometimes pulsing. Glyphs moved along the surface like blood through veins, words that refused to stay still. Are these inscriptions? Layla asked softly. No, Darek murmured. They're memories that want out. Every step deeper pressed against his thoughts, testing his grip on identity. Who are you? What do you fear? What will you trade to forget what you know? He ignored the voices. But the corridor narrowed. And the questions didn't stop. They reached a final archway. Beyond it, a wide, domed room glowed with unnatural luminescence. The floor was tiled in reflective black crystal. The ceiling had no carvings, only one giant mirrored disc, suspended like an inverted eye. And around the perimeter stood 12 full-length mirrors. None of them reflected true images. Instead, each showed a different version of the person standing before it. Layla, ancient, her eyes white, arms tattooed in serpentine glyphs. Rafi, cloaked in armor, face veiled, holding a dagger dripping sand. Darek, not aged, but transformed. His reflection wore the robes of a pharaoh, but the eyes were not his. Is this memory? Or prophecy? Rafi asked, his voice unsteady. Yes, Darek replied. At the heart of the chamber stood a cube of translucent crystal, suspended in midair by spindles of gold and copper. It spun slowly, humming with a frequency that vibrated in their bones. Inside it, curled like a sleeping child, was Asarata. Her skin shimmered like pearl. Her eyes remained bandaged in lotus silk, untouched by time. Veins of faint golden light ran across her body, pulsing in patterns that didn't follow any heartbeat. She wasn't dead. She wasn't alive. She was remembering. And as Darek approached, her eyes opened, despite the bandages. You came on feet. The last ones came as shadows. You carry the eye. But you also carry the choice. Darek staggered as the voice entered his mind, not loud, not sharp, but all-consuming, like sinking into deep water with no bottom. He looked into the crystal, into the void behind her eyes. Asarata, he whispered. What are you? I am the first memory. The thought no god dared think. The dream that broke the builders. I saw the shape of truth before it had language. And I remembered it too well. The crystal pulsed faster. Layla stumbled back, clutching her temples. She's inside me, I can hear her thoughts over mine. Rafi collapsed to one knee. She's pulling us apart. Darek stayed still. The compass flared brighter than ever. Asarata, he said, eyes locked on the glowing lines across her form. Why did they seal you? Because I remembered what was coming. Because I couldn't stop seeing it. The dome above them flickered, and then, showed them. The chamber vanished. They stood in a world in collapse. Cities drowned in sand without cause. Stars dimming one by one. Mass amnesia sweeping through civilizations like plague. People forgetting how to speak. Forgetting who they were. At the center of it all, a void shaped like a mind. Hungry. Endless. It is not death that ends the world, Asarada whispered. It is the loss of memory. I was made to hold it back. But now I am breaking. Back in the vault, the light dimmed. The crystal began to crack. Not violently. Elegantly. Like something was finally being released after millennia of waiting. Darek stepped forward. The compass no longer pulsed. It glowed, steady and still. Asarada's voice came again, quieter this time, like the final breath of a story about to end. You can take me into you. Like you did the eye. Or you can leave me here, and let me forget myself. But if you do, the world may forget itself, too. Darek turned to Layla. To Rafi. Neither spoke. Neither tried to stop him. He looked at the crystal. Then at the compass. Then back at her. I remember. And I choose to keep remembering. Chapter 16, The Memory That Devoured the Gods. The moment Darek Amun whispered, I choose to keep remembering, the vault responded, not with noise, but with reverence. The crystal containing Asarada fractured silently, each crack threading like veins of gold across the surface. There was no explosion, no collapse, just a deep exhale, like the breath of a world that had been holding itself still for too long. The light inside the chamber dimmed. Then bloomed. Not outward, but inward, as if the chamber were folding reality around them. Asarada lifted her head slowly, her eyes still bound in lotus silk. I see you. She did not move. And yet, Darek felt her step into him. The compass flared. Golden light laced with black tendrils wound from the fused relic at Derek's wrist, stretching toward Asarada's outstretched hand. She didn't touch him. She remembered him. And he remembered her. It was not a connection. It was a convergence. His knees buckled. The glyphs from the builder's vault spiraled along his arms, across his chest, then into his mind. 1,000 thoughts pressed inward, too many to hold. His memories scrambled. His first kiss. His father's final breath. A sunset over the dunes. All of them twisted with images of a world that never existed, yet felt familiar. The scream of stars. The scent of forgotten fire. The eye that swallowed language itself. Darek! Layla shouted, grabbing his shoulders as he collapsed. Let her go. But there was no letting go. Asarada wasn't possessing him. She was entering the vessel built for her long ago. The builders hadn't just sealed her away. They had built a lineage. A bloodline, coded, fragmented, disguised through centuries. Derek's family. His father. His ancestors. The rememberers. Outside the vault, in the ruins above Luxor, a new sound filled the air. Cracks in the firmament. The temple ceilings above groaned. Stone statues of ancient gods crumbled without being touched. Hieroglyphs bled red and black ink. Tourists in the streets saw nothing, but they forgot where they were, what they were saying. Some forgot their own names. All across Egypt, temples shivered. Because Asarada had reawakened. And the gods remembered her. They remembered what she had seen. A truth so vast it undid divinity. Inside the vault, Derek's body glowed faintly, suspended above the shattered remains of the crystal cage. His mouth was still. But when he opened his eyes, they weren't his anymore. They were hers, behind his. Green and gold and endless. His voice echoed, layered. The gods built faith to avoid fear. The builders faced fear to understand it. And I was the cost of their knowing. But now I am carried again. The room shook. Not from movement, but from unstable memory. The vault itself began to reform. Walls shifted, glyphs reversed, the entire structure flickering between design states. Rafi pressed himself to the wall. This whole place is rewriting itself. Layla turned to Darek, Asarada Darek, and stepped close. You have to ground it. Anchor the memory before it unravels. Darek held up his hand. The compass glowed one last time. And then split. The serpent coil fell away. The Lotus center cracked. It had served its purpose. Darek slammed his hand into the pedestal where Asarada's cage once sat. A beam of light erupted from the stone, spiraling up into the mirrored dome. The entire vault froze, caught in the stasis between collapse and clarity. And then... peace. The rumbling stopped. The glyphs settled. Time remembered itself again. And Darek slowly lowered himself to the floor. His breathing steady. His eyes still layered, but his again. I can hold her, he said, voice hoarse. She's quiet now. No longer screaming. Layla knelt beside him. Are you still you? I'm me, he said. Just more. Rafi approached, visibly shaken. What now? We leave her here. Walk away. Darek looked toward the corridor that led back to the surface. Then back at the glowing glyphs still fading from his arms. No, he said. Now we finish what the builders started. We find the others. Because Asarada wasn't the only mind they sealed. And something older is waking. Chapter 17, The Signal Beyond the Sand. The surface welcomed them with silence. No wind. No stars. Only stillness. As Darek, Layla, and Rafi emerged from the vault beneath Luxor, the air felt heavy, like the sky itself had exhaled just once, then refused to breathe again. Derek's skin was still marked with faint glyphs, glowing occasionally in response to unseen forces. Asarada had gone quiet within him, no longer pressing visions into his skull every few seconds, but her presence remained. Not dormant. Not docile. Just, waiting. They camped just outside the city that night, among dunes where tourists never wandered. As the others slept, Darek stared into the fire, his eyes unfocused. He wasn't watching the flames. He was listening. Then it came. A tremor, not through the earth, but through thought. The compass was gone, shattered in the vault. But the mark it left inside him remained, and now it was pulsing, a low, steady rhythm that beat against his ribs like a second heart. Another has stirred. He felt it like a whisper in the blood. Not from Egypt. Farther. South. Deeper. Beneath Nubian rock, where a mind not made by builders had been waiting. At dawn, Layla found Darek sketching in the sand with his finger. Not symbols. Not maps. Constellations. What are you drawing? She asked. Where we go next, he replied. Rafi stirred behind them. So much for resting. Darek stood, dusting sand from his robes. This wasn't the end. It was the key. When Asarada was released, she echoed. That echo reached others like her, those buried by time, locked by memory. You're saying there are more like her? Darek nodded slowly. They were the ones even the builders feared. Layla retrieved a piece of parchment they had salvaged from the Luxor vault, its surface once blank, now glowing with a line of shifting glyphs. She translated aloud. When the eye opens, the mouth will answer. But beware, not all minds wish to be remembered. Rafi grimaced. That doesn't sound promising. Darek turned toward the south. The builders didn't seal mines like Asarada because they were dangerous. They sealed them because they weren't alone. Back in Perbastet, in the bookshop's hidden cellar, Darek laid out the scrolls once thought to be disjointed myths and builder fragments. Now, they aligned. Not geographically, but neurologically. The builders encoded locations into the way memory spreads, he explained, drawing invisible lines through columns of glyphs. Not cities. Signal nodes. Places where thought was concentrated, where dreamers were buried. Layla traced one arc with her finger. You think they used the earth like a nervous system? Not just the earth, Darek said. They used time, too. That night, Darek stood alone on the rooftop as wind swept the city. From the south, it came again. That tremor. A second beat. A second call. But this one was different. Deeper. Hungrier. Where Asarada had been graceful, mournful, and immense, this signal was primal. Unrefined. Layla joined him, arms crossed. You feel it too? He nodded. This one isn't sealed like she was. It's leaking. Far across the desert, at an abandoned outpost near Wadi Halfa, 3 riders in crimson robes knelt before a half-buried statue, its head shattered, its mouth wide open. One of them pressed his hand to the stone lips. Whispers filled the air. It breathes again. The mouth remembers. The vessel has opened the path. Darek rolled up the builder's chart, its ink still faintly glowing. Pack light, he said. No caravan. No attention. Layla glanced at him. You think we're being followed? I know we're being followed, he said. The Brotherhood isn't done with us. They weren't trying to stop me in Ibi Sutek. They were trying to wake something else. Rafi stepped into the room with a half-smile. So we head toward the creepy heartbeat in the ground? Darek returned the smile. Exactly. We go to Nubia. To the tomb where the mouth of stone has begun to speak. Chapter 18, The Mouth That Should Never Speak. The Nubian desert was a different kind of silent. It didn't whisper like the sea of stillness or tremble with the memory-laden winds of Luxor. No. This silence felt watchful, as though the dunes themselves were listening, waiting for something, or someone. Darek Amun rode ahead, his frame cloaked against the blistering sun. His skin still bore the faint, ever-shifting glyphs of the builder's vault, and deep in his veins, the echo of Asarada stirred. She was aware. But she did not speak. Not here. Because even she knew what was buried beneath this place. The coordinates they followed weren't found on any scroll or map. They had come from within Darek. After Asarada's release, the signal had begun bleeding through him, compass, memory, thought, instinct. He didn't know the route, but his feet did. They arrived at a low mesa in the middle of a dune field. No markers. No obelisks. Just cracked, sun-baked stone etched with fractures that hummed. This is it, Darek said, brushing sand from the stone surface. It's beneath us. Rafi looked around. There's nothing here. Layla knelt beside a jagged break in the rock. No, there's too much here. It's all been buried on purpose. Then she paused. Do you hear that? They listened. And from below the ground, faint as breath. Come closer. As they cleared away the stone, they found a pit, a natural shaft, descending at an angle into darkness. Around its rim were markings, deeply worn and ancient beyond comparison. Not hieroglyphs. Not builder script. These were pre-symbolic, art carved by instinct, not design. Spirals. Jaw shapes. Tongues coiled like serpents. Symbols meant to move, not to be read. And at the base of the shaft, a massive stone slab shaped like a jaw, cracked down the middle. Rafi muttered, "We're not opening that." But the moment Darek touched it, the fissure widened. With a rumble, the mouth opened. They descended in torchlight, the walls smooth and curved like the inside of a throat. The path spiraled downward, the temperature dropping rapidly. Darek could feel pressure building behind his eyes, not physical, but cognitive. Every step made it harder to think clearly, as if something below was unspooling his mind. They reached the first chamber. Carved along the wall in ancient glyphs. The mouth is not to be spoken to. The mouth does not lie. The mouth only remembers. And at the center of the chamber, half sunken in stone, was a face. Not sculpted. Not fashioned. But grown from the floor. A massive, humanoid face with closed eyes, skin of stone, and a mouth that had no lips, just teeth. Rows of them. Uneven. Unnatural. Layla recoiled. It's alive. Darek stared. No. It's worse. It's aware. They approached cautiously. The mouth did not move. But Darek heard it. You opened the eye. You carry the dream. But you did not come to listen. You came to speak. Darek staggered back. It's in my mind. No, Rafi interrupted. It's in all of ours. The mouth pulsed once. And opened. A deep, wet breath filled the room. Dust and heat. Memory and breath. And then. It spoke aloud. The sound was not a voice. It was the undoing of silence. I am the mouth between ages. I was made when the first thought was rejected. The builders sealed me not in anger, but in terror. Because I remember what came before them. The chamber dimmed. Torches faltered. Images flooded the space, not light, not vision, but pure knowing. Gods born from fear. Languages carved from hunger. Voices that created matter, then devoured it. A world shaped not by design, but by sound. I remember the first sound. And if you ask me, I will give it to you. Darek felt the pressure building inside him, his mind buckling beneath layered thought. Layla gripped his arm. Darek, don't listen. Whatever it offers, don't take it. But Asarada stirred within him. And she whispered. Even I never dared to speak to the mouth. If you ask, you may never unhear what comes. Darek stepped forward. The face smiled. Rows of ancient, bloodless teeth. Ask. And I will remember aloud. For a moment, the world hung on a breath. Darek turned to Layla. If I listen, I might lose myself. Then don't. But if I don't, I might never understand what's coming. He turned back to the mouth. Its smile widened. Then. He asked. Tell me the first sound. Chapter 19, The First Sound. The air inside the vault was utterly still. Not calm, expectant. Darek Amun stood at the edge of the stone mouth. His breath shallow. His body tense. The moment he spoke the words, "Tell me the first sound," something shifted in the silence. The world listened. The face beneath him, the mouth, did not move. And yet. It spoke. Not with volume. Not with breath. But with origin. The chamber went black. Darek did not close his eyes, sight was taken from him. Light became meaningless. And then. He heard it. Not with ears, but in the marrow of his bones. A vibration. A pulse. A note not made of music, but of existence. The sound that came before time. The first utterance in the void. Not a word, not a roar, a memory made audible. And it said only one thing. Be. The moment it was heard, the vault convulsed. Not physically, ontologically. The idea of vault, of chamber, of below, ceased to matter. Derek's body buckled. His thoughts blurred. He saw his own birth, from behind his mother's eyes. His father's last breath, rewinding and repeating. His ancestors carving glyphs they didn't yet understand. The builders hearing this sound, and breaking. He dropped to his knees, gasping. Rafi shouted. What did it do to him? Layla grabbed Darek, shaking him. Darek, snap out of it. And still, the voice echoed. B. 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 Within Darek, Asarata stirred. But not as a whisper. She rose like fire behind his eyes. You fool. You asked for the sound that built the lie. Do you know what you've done? Suddenly, Darek saw them. Others. Dozens. No, hundreds. Men and women across time and space, all who had heard the sound, all who had tried to understand it. Each one driven mad. Their faces twisted in awe, agony, silence. Some buried beneath mountains. Some sealed in walls. Some walking still, speaking nonsense that turns truth sideways. And now, Darek was among them. But he was different. Because he remembered Asarata. Because he carried the eye. Because he didn't just hear the sound. He survived it. The great stone face began to recede into the ground, crumbling inward. Its purpose fulfilled. Its truth spoken. The vault walls grew smooth, then transparent, no longer a prison. Just, a scar in the earth. And as the mouth sank away, its final whisper carried into Derek's mind. You are not a vessel now. You are a voice. Darek rose. His skin glowed faintly, no longer etched with glyphs, but with resonance. The first sound pulsed beneath his heartbeat. Rafi looked afraid. Are you still you? Darek turned to him, eyes shimmering green gold. I'm more than me. He looked to the south. There's another vault. Far from Nubia, in the salt deserts near Siwa, a black obelisk cracked in two. Inside, a figure stirred, blindfolded, breathless, grinning. She whispered. Another remembers. Then so shall I. Back in the Nubian dunes, Darek stood tall, wind brushing over his face. Layla approached him quietly. What was the first sound? He paused. Then answered. Creation. But without mercy. Chapter 20, The Whisper in the Salt. The salt desert stretched before them like the bones of a dead sea. White cracked earth gleamed under a blistering sun, broken only by the faint outlines of ruins too eroded for time to claim. There were no birds here. No insects. No echoes. The wind itself passed in silence. It wasn't lifeless. It was listening. Darek Amun stood at the edge of a forgotten plateau, the resonant glyphs burned into his skin flickering with pulses that didn't match his heartbeat. Since the first sound, his senses had sharpened into something more than human. He could feel minds that weren't awake, yet still aware. One of them was here. Waiting. She hears us, Asarata whispered inside him. She has always heard us. Because the salt remembers everything the sea tried to drown. They'd followed no map. Only dreams. 3 nights after the mouth spoke, Darek awoke with salt on his lips, and a single phrase carved into the sand outside their tent, though no one had walked near them during the night. I hear you, bearer of the sound. The dream had shown a city made of glass and bone, swallowed whole by a rising ocean. But beneath that ocean was not death. It was containment. They reached it at dusk, a shallow bowl of land where the salt crust thinned, revealing a faint spiral carved deep into the stone beneath. From a distance, it looked natural. But up close, it was too precise. Too deliberate. And at its center, the remains of a black obelisk. Cracked. Collapsed. But breathing. Not literally. But Darek felt it, as a pressure behind his eyes. This vault wasn't broken into, Layla said, kneeling beside a jagged stone. It was opened. Rafi scanned the horizon. But not recently. This happened ages ago. Darek knelt, hand brushing over the spiral's center. A voice rose from the depths. Not a roar. Not a whisper. Just a laughter so soft it sounded like weeping. They entered through a cleft in the rock beneath the broken obelisk. The passage twisted down like a serpent's spine, the walls lined not with glyphs, but scars, scratches and gouges that had no symmetry, no pattern. These weren't carved, Layla murmured. They were made by movement. Or by something trying to get out, Rafi muttered. Darek said nothing. Because he could already hear her. They entered the heart of the vault, an enormous space beneath the salt, shaped like a throatless amphitheater. The ceiling rose high, vanishing into darkness. Along the walls, carvings of tongues, layered over ancient diagrams of the human skull, throat, and brain. But the centerpiece was a well. Circular. Deep. Pitched with salt-stained walls. And from within it came the voice. You speak with his breath. I remember that sound. Let me out, so I may remember you. From the well, a figure rose. Not climbing. Not flying. Just, ascending. She floated above the salt, her skin pale and thin, her mouth sewn shut with black thread. Her eyes were open, but she did not blink. Her hands were inked with spirals that moved subtly beneath her translucent skin. Her name pressed itself into Darek's mind. Oneris. The Whisperer. The echo of the first sound. Darek stepped forward. You were sealed before the eye. Before Asarada. Before even the builders understood what memory could do. Oneris tilted her head. I was not sealed to be contained. I was sealed to contain the voice of something else. Suddenly, her hands moved, fingers forming ancient mudras. The salt floor trembled. And the ceiling of the amphitheater shifted, revealing a lattice of black crystal veins. Inside them, more figures. Dozens. All of them weeping salt. These aren't prisoners, Layla whispered. No, Darek said, eyes wide. They're vessels. Of what? Rafi asked. Darek's voice trembled. Of her words. Oneris raised her hand toward Darek, and the glyphs across his skin flared in response. You carry the first sound. But I carry what it left behind. The words that made it real. She stepped closer. Let us speak together. And remake what the gods tried to forget. For the first time since hearing the sound, Asarada panicked inside Darek's mind. You must not speak with her. She is not a vessel. She is a mouthpiece. She does not remember. She rewrites. Oneris stood just before him now, eyes shimmering, voice still sealed, hands glowing faintly with script. One word, Darek. Just one. And I will answer. Speak, and I will unbury the world. Chapter 21, The Word That Should Not Be Spoken. The salt trembled underfoot. Not from any quake or wind, but from anticipation. Darek Amun stood mere feet from Oneris, the Whisperer, her mouth still sewn shut, her hands glowing with memory script. The figures in the crystal above, the other vessels, began to weep silently, their faces twisted in awe, grief, or worship. Around them, the amphitheater pulsed faintly. Each breath Darek took echoed as if it traveled down 1,000 throats. One word, Oneris had said. And I will answer. Layla gripped Darek's shoulder. Don't say anything. You don't know what she'll do. I do, he whispered. Then why are you hesitating? Derek's voice came hollow. Because part of me wants to know. Behind his eyes, Acerata surged. This is what they warned of. The whisperer carries not memory, but language. The root of thought. The mechanism of gods. She does not remember the world, she can rename it. Rafi's blade slid halfway from its sheath. You speak that word, we might not even exist by the time it leaves your mouth. Darek turned to the whisperer. Her eyes never blinked. Her lips never moved. But her hands continued to glow. And the message was clear. Say it. Give me voice. Darek felt it rising inside him. The word. It had no letters. No shape. No translation. It was not built to be understood, only to be uttered. It came from the same source as the first sound. But where the first sound had created being, this word could create meaning. And meaning was dangerous. He opened his mouth. Layla stepped between him and Oneris, her voice sharp. Darek. Look at me. This isn't curiosity. It's temptation. He blinked, his vision blurred. The glyphs on his arms flickered erratically. The word clawed at his throat. He could feel it reshaping the air around him. Then, Acerata screamed. Not aloud. Not in fear. But in defiance. No. The vault shook violently. The crystal veins above fractured. The salt floor split. The cocooned vessels let out a harmony of silent wails, each one a different chord of unfinished thought. Rafi yelled over the chaos, "What's happening?" Darek fell to his knees, clutching his head. The word inside him reached its peak, one breath away from release. Oneris raised her glowing hands. And smiled without lips. Let the world hear me again. Derek's voice cracked as the pressure built behind his teeth. His body wanted to speak. His mind wanted to scream. But somewhere inside, something older pushed back. Not Acerata. Not the eye. Him. Darek, the boy who mapped catacombs by candlelight. The man who chased stories instead of power. The archaeologist who loved the truth, even when it cut deep. He looked up at Oneris. And whispered, not the word, but a name. No. The vault collapsed inward. Salt imploded. Light reversed. The sound of a word unsaid echoed like thunder. Oneris screamed, not from her mouth, but from every crack in the air. The vessels above shattered. The well caved in. And the whisperer vanished in a burst of salt smoke and memory. Darek lay in the dust, bleeding from the nose, vision spinning. Layla knelt beside him. You didn't speak it. I almost did. Rafi sat hard on the ground. We've faced curses. Echoes. Eyes. But a word that could unravel reality. Darek turned toward the pit where Oneris had stood. That wasn't a vault. It was a trap. They left her here as bait. To find someone who could speak it. The word still exists. She just wanted to hear it aloud. Later, as they packed to leave the salt desert, Darek sat apart, writing in an old journal. Layla approached. What now? We can't follow signals blindly anymore, he said. Not every sealed mind is a victim. Some were locked away for very good reasons. He looked up, eyes still glowing faintly. We're not just unearthing memory anymore. We're stepping into the ruins of language itself. Chapter 22, The Library Without Pages. The signal led them east. Beyond the reach of rivers or kingdoms, beyond tombs and temples, into a valley scorched by time, its cliffs carved not by erosion but by intention. There were no villages here. No ruins marked on maps. Just a single plateau, utterly smooth, as if a god had placed its palm upon the land and pressed knowledge into it. Darek stood at its edge, staring at the circular stone structure nestled against the cliff face. It looked like a library. But it had no entrance. No doors. No windows. Just walls of seamless black stone. And yet, the compass that no longer was, a phantom in his wrist, pulled him forward. They feared the mines, Asarada murmured inside him. But they feared ideas even more. Layla circled the structure slowly. There's no inscription. No access point. There wouldn't be, Darek said. This place wasn't meant to be found. It was meant to be remembered only if everything else failed. Rafi squinted. So how do we get in? Darek stepped closer and raised his hand. He didn't press. He remembered. And the wall opened. Not like a door. It peeled back, as though thought itself had loosened the lock. And they stepped inside. The interior was vast, far larger than the structure seen from outside. Curving hallways spiraled downward, not in floors, but conceptual layers. The walls were covered in slots, not shelves, not scrolls. Empty spaces. Rafi frowned. Where are the books? Layla tilted her head. There never were any. Darek walked to the nearest slot and touched it. Instantly, a pulse of information surged into his mind. The name of a color that makes men weep. A symbol that, if drawn in sand, causes birds to fall silent. A question that, once asked, removes the memory of asking it. A lie that becomes true only if no one speaks it. He pulled his hand away, breathing hard. The builders didn't store knowledge, he said. They stored cognitive weapons. They descended deeper. The air grew thick, not with heat or dust, but with resistance. Like thought was harder down here. And in the center of the lowest chamber, a locked idea. A sphere of swirling glass suspended in a cradle of unmarked stone. Around it, words floated in midair, not written, not spoken, but existing in that impossible state between knowing and fearing. Layla touched one. Her body jolted. She dropped to one knee, shaking. Rafi caught her. What happened? She gasped. It was a future. A possible one. One where the first sound wins. Darek approached the sphere. This isn't a library. It's a mental quarantine zone. The glass sphere responded to his presence, humming faintly. Asarada whispered. We locked this one. Not because it was wrong. But because it was right. Derek's hand hovered over the cradle. Do not touch it, Asarada warned. Even I would forget myself. But something pulsed from within. Not a memory. Not a name. A theory. It slipped into Derek's mind uninvited. What if reality is only what survives remembering? What if forgetting is not failure, but defense? The sphere cracked. Just slightly. And from it came a voice, not a person, not a presence, but a concept with will. I am the thought they feared to think. I am the end of language, the unmaker of pattern. You carry memory like a blade. I will show you why it should never be drawn. The chamber twisted. The stone warped. Suddenly, they weren't in the library anymore. They stood in alternate histories. A version of Egypt where the gods were hunted by mathematicians. A desert where every word spoken became a living thing. A world where memory was stored in flesh, and the dead could not forget what they were. And then, all of it blinked out. They were back. The sphere was gone. Shattered. Darek collapsed, hands over his face, glyphs on his skin flashing like fire. Darek, what happened? He looked up slowly. And spoke one sentence. Someone released it already. Rafi looked around. What do you mean? Darek stood, slowly. That idea, the one they sealed, it wasn't just theory. It was contagious. Someone else found a vault like this. And they didn't contain it. They set it free. Asarada's voice returned, low and grim. Then it begins. The unraveling. Not of memory, but of meaning. There are more libraries. And if one opens them all, language itself may collapse. Chapter 23, The Scribe Who Spoke in Tongues. There were no records of him. No birth. No death. No tomb. No name. Just fragments, muted echoes in forbidden texts, footnotes in erased scrolls, and builder glyphs that stuttered when trying to speak of him. The one they feared most. The scribe who spoke in tongues. Darek Amun stood in the shadow of a ruined obelisk in northern Dakhla oasis, the sun burning overhead, his skin still marked with the glyphs that now pulsed in response to movement, not physical, but linguistic. The air here wasn't quiet. It was garbled. Bird calls reversed. Winds carried whispers that meant nothing, until you listened long enough, and they began to mean everything. Rafi studied the worn inscription on a fractured tablet they had pulled from the vault library. You're sure this is where the theory was released? Darek nodded. This is where it first took form. The builders called it a shatterpoint, a place where a dangerous idea found its first speaker. Layla ran her hand over the stone. And this scribe, he didn't just read it. He understood it. No, Darek said, turning toward the canyon beyond the ruins. He spoke it. And when he did, something listened. That night, they camped near the edge of the canyon, reviewing the fragments they'd collected from the memory spheres and builder caches. Every time they reached the passage about the scribe, the text broke down. One scroll dissolved into sand. A glyph restructured into a mirror of itself. A line of builder code reversed in sequence, reading the name backward, then erasing it. Rafi stared. Even the records can't hold him. Layla looked up, her face pale. That's the thing. I don't think he has a name anymore. I think he spoke it. Darek finished the thought. And the moment he spoke his name, it stopped meaning what it was. He rewrote himself in real time. At dawn, they found it, carved deep into the canyon rock, a circle of 20 glyphs, all builder script, each one incomplete. Like words abandoned mid-breath. But at the center was a newer mark, not carved. Melted. A sigil they hadn't seen before, an open mouth swallowing a spiral tongue. Darek knelt, feeling heat radiate from the stone. This is fresh, he said. Within the last week. Rafi's jaw clenched. So he's still out there. Layla pointed toward a narrow path that led deeper into the canyon. Not out there, she said. Down there. They followed the path to a chamber carved directly into the canyon wall, rounded, low-ceilinged, and filled with soundless inscriptions. They weren't glyphs. They weren't written. They were remembered into the stone. Each wall vibrated slightly, the residue of thought still fresh enough to tremble. At the center was a chair. High-backed. Blackened. And empty. Behind it, a passageway sealed in stone. On the wall, words began to form, not carved, not lit, but made of memory. I spoke. I was heard. Now they follow me. You carry the breath of the first sound. So you, too, will be heard. Darek reached for the wall. And the world fractured. Not physically, linguistically. He opened his mouth to speak and found himself saying a word he did not know. Rafi shouted, but his voice came out upside down, as if the sentence folded in on itself. Layla fell to her knees, her ears bleeding. From the sealed doorway behind the chair, a voice emerged. Soft. Repetitive. Like a mantra that didn't stop. Speak me. Speak me. Speak me. Speak me. The air snapped. The wall burst into visual thought, a stream of symbols spiraling outward. And there, burned into the stone, was a phrase. The final library waits beneath the eye that does not blink. Darek gasped. He's heading for it. Layla blinked, stunned. Where? Derek's breath caught. His memory spiraled backward, to the builder map. The sealed vaults. The constellation patterns. And then. He saw it. Not a place on Earth. A place in the sky. He whispered the words. It's in the desert, but only when Orion aligns. There's a tomb beneath the plateau that appears only under that constellation's gaze. The last sealed library is beneath the eye of Orion. As they exited the chamber, the wind carried a final whisper. When I arrive, there will be no need to speak. Because the world will speak me. Darek turned south. Eyes glowing. Voice steady. We have to get there first. Or we'll all become footnotes in a language that hasn't been written yet. Chapter 24, The Eye That Does Not Blink. The stars had always watched. But not all of them remembered. Not all of them listened. One did. The Eye of Orion, the star at the center of the celestial hunter's brow, blinked only once every 2,000 years, not in light, but in alignment. The builders had known this. They had encoded its return not in maps or scrolls, but in rhythm, buried in their architecture, echoing in their vaults, and beating now in Darek Amun's chest like a second heart. The time had come. Their path led them to the western desert, deep into the Katara Depression, where no caravans dared to tread and compasses turned useless by the magnetic veins below. But Darek didn't need maps anymore. He had memory. The three of them, Darek, Layla, Rafi, traveled by moonlight, led by a resonance that pulled not toward a place, but toward a moment. At twilight, the desert winds fell silent. The stars began to shift. And then, just after dusk, Orion blinked. A sharp, visible flicker in the constellation's center. To astronomers, it might be nothing. To the builders, it was the signal. Under Orion's gaze, the sand parted. Not physically, but perceptually. To the naked eye, nothing had changed. But to those who carried the eye, who had heard the first sound, who had stood before the whisperer, the dunes revealed their true shape. A temple, sunken and angular, partially buried but intact, made of stone that shimmered with the color of old memory, a shifting hue between copper and sorrow. No door. No markings. But 3 descending steps. The eye is open, Darek whispered. We go in. Inside, the structure defied geometry. Corridors bent without turning. Ceilings moved upward when walked beneath. Echoes reversed. The deeper they moved, the less they felt time. It wasn't a vault. It wasn't a tomb. It was a convergence point. A place where thought, word, memory, and sound had once been unified, then shattered deliberately and sealed away. At the center, they found the final library. And it was not made of shelves or scrolls. It was a mirror. A perfect, hovering disk of dark glass, 10 feet wide, suspended above a basin of silver dust. No text. No keys. Only reflection. Inscribed beneath the mirror in flickering builder script. Speak only what you do not mean. The library will hear the lie and open. Layla frowned. It opens with a paradox. Rafi stepped back. Or it opens with a trap. Darek stared into the mirror, and saw nothing. No face. No reflection. Because the library was not meant to show. It was meant to listen. And then. A voice behind them. Low. Calm. Impossible. You followed me well, bearer of the sound. They turned. And saw him. The scribe. Cloaked in desert robes, face hidden, fingers stained with black ink that dripped upward. His tongue flickered beneath his teeth, not flesh, but something that shimmered between language and worm. He did not walk. He conjugated across the floor. This is the last library. The one that cannot be opened by knowledge. Only by contradiction. Darek stepped forward, steady. What are you? The scribe smiled beneath his hood. I am what happens when memory forgets to be afraid. And when you speak the word, the library will open, for both of us. The scribe raised a finger, and the mirror rippled. Say something false. Let it feel the tremor of mismeaning. Let it taste the instability. And it will open the final idea. The one no mind can hold without breaking the world around it. Layla reached for Derek's arm. Don't. He wants you to break it. Darek turned, eyes burning. I don't want to break it. I want to understand it. He stepped to the mirror. And he said. I never came here. The library shuddered. The dust in the basin lifted like mist. The mirror cracked, not outward, but inward. As if it was struggling to contain what had always been inside. Then came the voice. Not Derek's. Not the scribe's. Not Asarada's. But the library itself. Access granted. From the mirror poured not light, but language. Unwritten. Spoken backward. Shapes and meanings that folded as they moved. They struck the chamber, rebounding into Darek, into Rafi, into Layla. The scribe stood in its center, mouth open, consuming every syllable like fire. He was not reading it. He was becoming it. Darek cried out, struggling to remain upright. It's not knowledge. It's a syntax, alive. Asarada screamed in his mind. Stop it. He'll rewrite the rules if he consumes it all, he'll reshape memory itself. But it was too late. The scribe stepped from the flood of words, now glowing, his form no longer flesh. Lines of text ran across his body, rewriting as they moved. He spoke. And the air obeyed. Stone bent. Sand reversed. Thought stilled. I am the last reader. Now I will speak the world into something better. Darek stepped forward. The mirror behind him cracking. The dust rising. And his hand, glowing with the glyphs of every vault he had survived. Then I'll speak back. Chapter 25, The Last Sentence. The air had stopped moving. Not paused, forgotten how. Time itself felt thin, stretched taut between what was and what might be rewritten. Darek Amun stood within the final library, surrounded by the spiraling storm of living language, while the scribe who spoke in tongues, now a vessel of flickering text and shifting form, stepped forward, his every breath bending the world subtly around him. You cannot stop me, the scribe said. I speak now in the first language, the one that taught silence how to end. Darek didn't flinch. The glyphs on his arms shimmered. Behind his eyes, Asarada stirred. The final vault has opened, she whispered. What you say now will either seal meaning forever, or unmake it. This was not a place for blades. This was not a war of armies. This was a sentence waiting to be spoken. Layla and Rafi stood behind Darek, barely able to hold form against the storm of shifting grammar. Every wall now pulsed with syntax that broke when read, every echo folding inward and then returning as something else. The scribe's voice turned more fluid with each step, warping nouns into actions, verbs into light. He no longer had a face, only meaning given shape. I will name the world again. I will remove error from memory, choice from thought. I will simplify. I will perfect. Darek stepped forward. No. You'll silence what makes us human. The glyphs on Derek's body began to glow in sequence. The eye of Wadjet. The mark of Aserata. The compass coil. The word he never spoke. The reflection from the salt. The builder's unfinished sentence. Each one carried weight. Each one carried meaning forged in fire. He raised his hand, and a construct of memory flared into being beside him. Not armor. Not shield. A voice. His voice. Himself. And it said, "We remember by choosing to forget." The scribe's arm swept forward. A blast of mirrored thought struck Darek, but his body, reinforced by everything he carried, did not collapse. Instead, Darek answered. Not with violence. With a sentence. I speak not to rewrite, but to remember what once was broken. The storm wavered. The library shook. The scribe reeled. No. No, 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 your syntax is flawed. Your words are wound in paradox. They carry grief. They carry loss. Darek smiled. Exactly. The mirror at the center of the chamber began to collapse inward, folding like paper set aflame from the center. The storm of words dimmed. And in the silence that followed, Darek stepped forward and whispered the last sentence. We do not need a perfect world. We need one that can be remembered. And with that, language settled. The glyphs froze. The words stopped moving. And the scribe screamed. Not in pain. Not in anger. In forgottenness. And he was gone. Unwritten. The final library shimmered, then faded. Not in light. In sound. Its walls unspoke themselves. The mirror dissolved. The basin dried. And the vault, like a final breath, sealed itself. Darek fell to his knees. Breathing. Alive. Whole. Days later, they stood at the edge of the plateau, the stars quiet above. Layla asked, "Did we win?" Darek looked up, the glyphs on his skin fading one by one. We didn't win. We remembered. Rafi smiled, battered but alive. That's enough. Darek nodded. For now. You spoke the sentence we never could. You gave meaning limits. And that is the only way memory survives. And then she, too, fell silent. A whisper of peace left behind.
Every story has an ending. But some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.